So let's create a new project. This time it's going to be chapter 5, functions. Windows Forms application. Let me turn my Solution Explorer on the properties, resize my form, the general stuff, right? Set the position to center screen. Okay, my toolbox. So let's do some examples in here. I guess we could just do an example to calculate the average of some numbers, and we use a function to do that for us. Okay, and we'll output that to the form. So let's just say that we're gonna have three Okay, we should add maybe like 3 fields. Well, we just read off like 3 numbers, it's fine. So 3 text box. We call this just txt input 1, 2, and 3. Txt input 1, and I'll resize my font to, again, 20. Okay, and I will also then just control and drag to get 2 copies. The second box will be just txt input 2, and then txt input 3. Still need a button, so put a button here. This will be BTN and then average. I'll call it BTN average to calculate the average. Change the font size to, I think I used 30 last time. Change the text to say average. Oops, that's a bit too big. So I could make it 20. And again, we use the list box to add to show the results. So this one I'll put on the side over here. Maybe I'll do do all these, put it somewhere here. Okay, and then we'll resize the form to look kind of like that. So a list of the averages. This will be just LST again result. I'll change the font size to about 20 also. Okay. So we'll read 3 inputs, and then we'll just get the average, and then we output it to the results here. and we'll trigger this when we click the average button. So let's go into the code view. You can double click the average button, and let me turn all these off so we have more room here. As you can see, it's inside the class called form1. We have this private sub beating average click handles average click. This is an event handler. All this is just a subroutine. Okay, and we'll study subroutine next week. So for now, so in here, some space. So we need to have 3 variables to receive those input from those 3 input fields. We will use a dim. I'll just put like num1 as. We'll take double, so we can accept decimal numbers and assign that to the input 1 dot text. Okay, so don't forget dot text. And what do you for num2, num3, the same thing. Okay, so dim num2 as double txt input to dot text. And then dim num3 as double txt input 3.text. Okay, so our read main input here is again read input, right? So we do like the usual way. So how do you calculate the average? So we want to store the total or the average into a separate variable. So we can declare another variable here, average, as double. So what is the average? What's the formula for average? Anybody remember? Right. So yeah, you add them up and then divide that by number of numbers, right, to get the average. So average is basically average is equal to num1 plus num2 plus num3 divided by 3. Does it work? And they want to output the average to the result. So the result is the LST result dot items dot add. I want to add the average. Is everything okay?
Don't you have to sum them first?
Right. Right? You have to sum them first. If you don't, what's going to happen here? The result will be very different, right? Because of the operator precedence, like in math. So what this means is that instead of adding, it's going to do this first. It's going to divide 3, whatever the number is, by 3, num3 by 3, and then add the 2, and you get an incomplete, incorrect result. So in this case, you have to make sure that you want to add them up first, then divide it by 3. Okay. If you don't do that, then you could do this way, average is equal to average divided by 3, right? Use separately. Okay, but since this is a really easy calculation, we're just going to do it all in one line. I'll put that to the list box. So, very good catch. Okay, so let's run this and see if that is correct. And we put in 3 numbers, 2, 4, and 6. The average should be 4, right? So 10 plus 2 is 12, divided by 3 is 4. Okay, so 2.3, 4.5, 4, whatever the A number, 6.5, average should be, you get a decimal number, and that's a lot of decimal number there. We could control that to have it so that we restrict that to be 2 decimal places. Okay. So that's how average works. Okay. So the average here, we could say average to to string, and they want to force that to be a number. So n. Oh, let's just say 2 decimal places. Okay. They want to close that. So n is lowercase, uppercase. I think shouldn't matter, but I usually like the big number character. So n is just a number of 2 decimal places. With C you get a dollar sign. Put a P you get a percent. Okay. So that is the simple solution for this example. Now you are going to, if I ask you to put this into a function, and you want to use the function, you read the input here in the button method subroutine, and you're going to use a function to calculate this average and return the average, return the total, the average back to the average variable. Okay, so we're going to do that. So we'll do this calculation here inside a function and return the value back to the average. Okay, so out here in the class space, doesn't matter where you put it, up, above, or below, up here, doesn't matter where, anywhere is fine, as long as it contains within the class space here. So we put down the bottom this example. We're going to put the keyword function. Okay, you don't have to put the private and public in the front if you can. You don't have to. And we're going to give this a name, a unique name. Okay, and I cannot use this name here. This is already used. It's taken. Okay, in the global space. And function cannot be declared inside another subroutine also. So I cannot have a sub inside a sub or a function inside a sub and vice versa. So in other words, I cannot go inside here and put function in here. Okay, it won't let you. You can't do that. Okay, so it has to be outside in the class space only. So a function, and we'll say this function here, maybe we'll say get average. Okay, so again, the name should be very meaningful in what this function should do. If you want to get the average, then just say get average, or if you want to test if one number is bigger than the other, you can say is larger, okay, or you can say is A larger than B, right? Or you can say get a larger number. Be very specific and also be meaningful in how you name your functions. Don't just say function my function or something. Doesn't make sense. Okay, so get the average, and then you have to put a parentheses in here, required. And then you also want to put the data type. This average to return, what are we returning? We're returning the average. So in this case, when you tackle this problem, you think through, okay, I need 3 numbers here. I'm going to calculate the average, and these numbers are all double, so the average should be double. If that's the case, then it's going to be double. If you don't say, I don't care about double, I want to use just integer, then you would use integer, right? So this example is double, so I want to use a function to calculate this part. So this return value has to be double, so therefore this function must return of type as double. Okay, and if you hit enter, the end function will include that automatically for you. If it doesn't, just type it in there to end that function. So in here is your block of code. Whatever is happening inside, any variable you declare inside here is local only to that function. Okay, just like up here. All of these here, the dims 1, 2, 3, num 1, 2, 3, and average are all local only to this sub called btn average click. Okay, so this function cannot have access to the num1, num2, and num3 here. If you go here, if you put num1, you see that it doesn't see it. It doesn't list it here because it's private to this subroutine. So how do you get these numbers to use over here? And the only way to get there is we pass it to the function here. So this is where you receive those values. Okay, so here you want to pass the num1, num2, and num3 to this function, so you can use these numbers, whatever these numbers are, to do the calculation. Otherwise, you see that you can't access these. The only way is to pass them to this function. So you need to have 3 receivers here to match these 3 inputs. Okay, so the first one's going to be, you can call the same name if you want. It's just an independent variable name. It's an independent method, so the name here has nothing to do with the name up here. Okay, and sometimes it's good to have the same name so you know exactly which number you're dealing with. Okay, so I'm going to call exactly the same here, num1, and I have to specify the data type for this. This first parameter has to be of type double. Okay, I have 2 more, num2, and let me put some space down here so we have more. So num2 as double as well. We also have a num3 as double. So we have 3 placeholders or 3 numbers to receive. And because we put 3 numbers now, every time when you reference or you call this function get average, you have to include 3 numbers. You can't just put 1. Okay, it will fail. So if you look under the function, there's a green line here. It says average doesn't return a value on call path. Are you missing a return statement? No. Let's give you a hint. So somewhere in here, I have to put the word return and then return something back. The number here or the value returned here can only be a single value. You cannot have like return A and B and C. Okay. So the return type has to match this double type. Expects a double. So in here, to get the average of these numbers, right, we calculate the same way as we do here. So I could copy this again, copy that, those 2 lines, copy it, and paste it in here. Okay. So I define an average variable name, and I get the average for that. So num1, this one here. The num2 comes in here. Num3 comes into this part here, and you add them up. You take the average, and then you return this average back. So I return average back. Okay, I got the result. Take it. Okay, so this average has to be double to match the double type. Again, these are your parameters. They have their own specific data type. They have nothing to do with the function's data type. Okay, it has its own different data type here. Okay, because this could be a string. I could put string here, and the return could be like good, right? The calculation still stand, but the return is different. It has to match that. Okay, so that's why if it's double, then it has to match the double type. And if you change this to int, it will probably still work. Okay, this is probably one of those cases that it'll work because an integer is smaller than a double, so a double can contain integer. That's why it's allowed. Okay, if you have a bigger box can contain a smaller box of the same kind, then it's okay. But if you change the other way around, it doesn't. You put integer here, integer, and if I change this to double, okay, or I guess in numbers, it will truncate any decimal numbers. Typically, it won't let you do it. It will. In this case, I think explicitly, you might have to convert, but I think Visual Studio converted automatically for us. So it will lose the decimal numbers. But typically, we want to have the same data type. Okay, so we got the function all set up, and then we have to call it. So up here, average equals this. So this is what we call your function. Again, it's has to be on the right side of the assignment operator, the equal sign, or inside an expression, right? This is an expression here, inside parentheses. So here, we're going to call it by using the function name called getAverage. GetAverage. Okay, and it takes 3 arguments. So the argument is going to pass our num1, comma, num2, comma, and num3. And notice this is still stay okay. Why is that? Anybody can tell me why? Why doesn't give you any error? Okay, so remember that this function is only from here to here. Okay, this function here takes 3 has 3 parameters, so it takes 3 arguments. Now 1, 2, and 3. So you call this function, it's going to go find this function name, whatever it is. It does the calculation, and then returns the number back. If it's like 642, they get a number of 3, because 12 divided by 3 is, actually no, 4, right? 4. The 4 comes back, then this whole thing becomes 4, and then you divide that by 3, right, to get a 1.5. Okay, so this whole thing, this function here, it calculates something, it returns back a number. So it's the same thing as saying 4 divided by 3. Okay, that's why it's legal. Okay, so I'm just showing you that that's legal here, but usually we just do that, right, to get the average. So get the average of those numbers. If it's 6, 2, and 3, that's 11 divided by 3, right? To get the average of that, and then we output the average here. So again, this average here is not this average here. They're completely separate variables, because this is, everything here is local to that, everything's local here. What the function does is it just receives some numbers and it passes something back. Okay, that's all it does. And then here you want to do some type of calculation instead of doing here like we did, we want to pass these numbers to the function called getAverage, and then it can calculate that number and then pass it back to us. Okay? Because maybe I have another button somewhere might do the same average, and then so later on a second subroutine or another function can call this function again and find the average and then send it back to wherever it's been called. Okay, so this is a reusable function. You can call it as many times as you want, anywhere as you want. So your parameters are just placeholders, or it's like a bucket, right? Receive some numbers or some data from where it's being passed to. So this case passed to from the average click subroutine. Okay, so if you save it now, if you run, and you see that it should work just like before. If you put again 2, 4, 6, you should get 4. That's 10 divided by 3, you get 12. 12 divided by 3, so you get 4 back, so it should be 4. And we force it to have a number of 2 decimal places, right? So you put 5, and you get different average. Okay. Any questions on how we constructed this function? How you call this function? Oh, any question at all? How functions work? So you can call this function as many times as you want. You could have like average 1, average 2, for example. Okay, and then average 2. So average 1, for example, and average 2 could be like average 2 is equal to get average. You can just pass the number. That doesn't matter, right? You just pass this number to that function. This one takes numbers from the input. This is just some arbitrary number we put in there. And then you can also add that to the list. You just copy that here, and we'll put the average 2 down here. Okay? So we have the average for the first one, average for the second one. So I call the same function, different numbers, but you get the same, you get the expected results back. So if you run this, if you put some numbers in here, 4, 5, 6. The first is the average for this 3. This average is for these numbers right here. Okay? So that's why functions are meant to be reusable. Okay, you can use it again and again and again. And so if you don't do that, then you have to do that same calculation here, and then here, and then anywhere else, right? So that saves you a lot of time. If you build a function like this, and if you put it into a module, then you can pass this module as a library to other programmers, and they can use the same function that you built. So everybody can share that same function. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so again, notice if you take one of these out, you have a line. It says you have an unmatched number of parameters. Okay? So that's why it will tell you that you need to put 3. And again, usually if you have a function built already, if you type it here, the IntelliSense will tell you that you have 1, 2, and 3 of them, and what data type you expect. Okay, so it's kind of helpful there. So this is a function call in the right side of the equal sign. You could also put an expression. So for example, you could say, let's see, result items add. Okay, I can call the function right away in here. So get average. Okay, I passed 3 parameters. I could pass num1, num2, num3 in here. I'll get the same average as the first one. So this whole thing here is just a value. That's all it is, right? You pass it to the function, it calculates it, returns a number back. Here we just assign the same number to a different variable to store the number. Here we display the number right away. We don't store that number into any other variable. We just display the number. Okay, because function returns a value. Okay, so this whole thing here is same thing as average 3. And then because of this whole thing here is this block I highlighted is the same as average 1 or average 2, and because of that I can still add that to string, right? So this whole thing here from average and here you can still say dot to string, string, and then if you're going to put that into the N2 again, okay, or if we use 3 for 3 decimal places, that's fine. Okay, so you can see how you can attach each of these using the dot notation, because this whole thing here, when you evaluated this, you get a number, and then just change the format the number to 3 decimal places. And this whole thing is inside the add part. So as you can see, it's quite confusing, right? And that's why, because it's confusing, it's better to break it down into a variable name like this, and then you just use the variable name here. It's much easier. Okay, but this should still work. So this shows you that a function can be used inside expression. So if you look at this add here, add is a function. It takes a parameter, right? It takes one argument in this case. This whole thing here is a single argument. If it's not, then you have a comma here, right? So it takes one argument. So this whole thing here is treated as a argument, and then in this case it would be just a string to the add function. Same thing here. So if you run this one, you get the same average for 3, 4, 5. The first and the third should be the same. Okay, so this and this, I just changed the decimal places to 3 instead of 2. Okay, so there are many ways how you can use function and what you can call them. The advantage of this doing this way is you assign the value to a variable, and if you want to reuse this variable again later, then you can. If you do it this way, then you can't use this variable again, right? If you want to get it, well, you have to call the whole thing again. What if you want to double the average, right? I could just say average here. I know the average here, so I just say average is that, and then down here somewhere I say average 1 is equal to average 1 times 2, right? You double it, and then now average 1 is double. So this one I can't do that. If you want to do that, then you have to do like this whole part gets complicated, right? Times 2, wrap that, one whole piece, right? You see it? This thing here times 2, and then this whole thing is just like the average 1, 2 string. what if you want to do like average, plus average, times 2? How do you do that, right? So it gets complicated. This is much easier to put into a variable name. Here, it's a problem. I have to call this again one more time, and then plus itself one more time in the times 2. So there are different ways you can call, and there are different times that maybe sometimes you may not need to, put this into a variable name. If you just call it one time and use it only once and that's it, then that's fine. If you think about, if you want to use that total again later on, then it's always better to put into a variable name and then reference that variable name. Not only that, your code looks much cleaner. Okay? Much cleaner. But you can do like I just showed you here. So function always goes on the right side of the equal sign or inside some type of expression. In this case, inside another a function, or inside a if block, right? You can say if here, or you can say if get average 1, 2, 3 is greater than 4, then that's fine. Okay, this is inside a expression, because again it just basically evaluated to a number. Okay, well, you cannot do this. You cannot do like get average 1, 2, 3 equals something. Okay, you cannot put on the left side, because it returns something, and because of that, then what you get is really, you get like a number equal a number. Okay, that's not a valid statement. If it's 3, then 3 equals 3 is not a valid statement. But if you put if that equals 3, then it's okay, right? Right? That's fine, because same thing as saying if 3 equals 3, then that's fine. Okay? So that's one of the rules. Okay, so what you see here is basically you're passing the number of the values of num1, 2, and 3 to this function here. And let me turn these off. You're basically just passing a copy of that value. Okay, so if you put 3, the num1 would still be just you copy of 3 goes here, copy of 4 goes here, copy of 5 goes here. So let's do another function, just to show you about the pass by value, and then we'll take our last break. Okay, so we'll create another function here. We'll leave this as is. So we'll create another function. So function, we'll just call it pass by value. Okay, and we're going to return as double. And we will return, we'll just pass a single number here, just num1, and I'll call it a different name. Okay, we'll just call it maybe just I don't know, numbers. Just number, a bit different. That's double. So this one takes only one parameter. And all I'm doing is I'm going to change this number. I'm going to just multiply by 2 and then return it back. Okay. So you could do a dim new new number as double, and this is just basically equals to number times 2. Okay, and then we return the new number back. So return new number. Okay, so they match. That's all it does. I'm just gonna double it. You can even make this shorter. How would you make it shorter? So if you see this here, can you make this shorter? So I mean, when you started out, you will put everything into like different variables like this, but when you get better, you can say, hey, you know what? I'll just do this. I can just return that. I don't need this, right? It's the same thing, okay? It's the same thing because it saves you a lot of line. But basically, when you started out, you can put into variable name. You see that, hey, you know what? I could just do that here, and I don't need to declare that local variable name. Okay, but that's fine for now. All right, so up here, after the average, I'm going to declare a different number, not average, but let's put up here, we'll change the average to I don't know, maybe new number is fine. So this new number, okay, so new number is going to be assigned to that passed by value, and this one takes one argument, so I'm going to pass the num1 to it. Okay. And then I'll put the new number here. I also want to output the num1. Okay, so put another one, lst result items dot add num1. Just that with no decimal places, the original number. Maybe the new number we'll leave out the decimal places too. We'll just remove the decimal place. We'll just leave the original number. What I'm showing you here is that here we pass the num1 to the pass by value. So pass by value receives the num1 and puts it into a variable called number. If it's a 3, comes in here. So 3 goes in here. Actually, down here, I want to. This is incorrect. Let's do this. Let's modify this. I want to duplicate this number. So I'm sorry. I'm gonna change this. Okay. So I'm gonna put here number equals to number times 2. I will return the number back. Okay, so 3 comes in here, and then we'll say the number whatever 3 is going to be 3 times 2 assigned to itself, so it now becomes 6, and then return 6 back. So it looks like we changed the number inside here, right? We changed its number. It doesn't have to be a number. It could be anything here is fine. It could be like 5 times 10, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But all we do is we just double the number and return it back. So if 3 comes in here, so 3 times 2 is 6. So now number is now 6. We turn it back. So this new number is now 6. And you would think that, hey, I passed this number through here. I change it. It should also change here too. And then therefore this number should also be changed to whatever that new number is. Okay? Let's run this. So here is the number 1. We put 3 here, and then 4, and this 5. So I'll take the average. So the average is, the first line is this one here. That's the average. The new number, we pass it 3 to this pass by value, and we double it. So we got 6 back, and so the new number is 6. But as you can see, the original number 1 is still 3. Okay, so it does not affect the original number. I'm not sure I explained this clearly. Do you get this? That I'm just passing a copy to itself? Okay? And the reason why I say this is because next week we'll talk about the by reference. Just show you very quickly what it means by reference. So for example, if I change this here to say by reference, okay, it's a completely different number. Okay, just by putting it here, you'll see that the result will be different. If I put 3, 4, 5, you see that the number average is that. The new number is 6, so 3 times 2 is 6. And then num1 is now 6. Okay? Is no longer 3. Just because we put the by reference in front of it, even though this is a different variable name, it stores the same number as this. Okay? It actually changes the value because we change it inside this function here. The number here now, and this one here, and this num1 actually points to the same memory location. Okay, so if I change it in here, it also changes outside of this function. Okay, so that's why I keep mentioning a few times by reference and by value. And this is important, and that's a very important case. Sometimes you have to do that. If you think of by reference, we'll talk about next week, it's like you have a checking account, okay? And you have a joint account by, you or your spouse or your friend or whatever it is, your family members, you all have access to the same account. If you withdraw cash from that account, everybody is affected, right? It's the same account. So you would see that, oh, my account is shortened by $5 or $20. If you add money to it, you already get the same account. You see the number is also changed. That is an example of it by reference. By value, like we did earlier, if I take this out, then all I'm doing is that here I have a $20 bill. I gave it to you. You can use whatever you want. You can change it, lose it, make more money out of it. I have no access to your value $20. Okay, I still have my copy. I gave it to you, and you make your own number out of that. So that's by value. So here we would use the number here without the by reference. I pass in the number 3 to this number, you just receive a copy of that. So even though it seems that I'm changing the value in here, it has no effect on the original number out here. Okay? So by default, when you pass a variable to a function or a subroutine, it's always by value, unless you explicitly say by reference in front of it. Okay? And we'll talk about that next week. So, take a last 10-minute break. We'll come back, and then we'll do maybe some examples in the book before we leave for the day. Okay, so I'll see you back in about 10.